Hello there. We are gonna get spooky with talking about the dead and undertakers. No, not that Undertaker. He's a lovable jerk. But we're talking about the Genshin Impact Undertaker, Hu Tao. Obviously, by the title, anyhow, let's not get carried away and get ready right into the information on Hu Tao. Hu Tao is a playable pyro character in Genshin Impact. She is the 77th director of the Genshin funeral parlor. Hu Tao is a female character in Genshin Impact. Her vision is pyro, and her weapon is a polearm. Her birthday is July 15th, and her constellation is Baterilio Charchantris. Her nation is Liyue, and she has two affiliations, that's being with the Genshin funeral parlor and the Hu family. Her special dish is Ghostly March, which is a variant of the vegetarian abalone. She became the playable character on March 2nd, 2021. The four spooky voice actors of Hu Tao are Brianna Knickerbocker in English, who by the way also voices Kaide, who I can know by the way, Diane Dao in Chinese, Rei Takahashi in Japanese, and Kim Haru in Korean. Hu Tao has three titles, those being Fragrance in the 77th generation director of the Genshin funeral parlor, and Liyue's Harbor's versemonger of the darkest alleys. Hu Tao has a fair complexion and a petite build. Her eyes are bright scarlet with white, blossomed shaped pupils. Faded red makeup painted at the corners. She has extremely long, dark brown hair, fading to crimson at the tips. Her hair is styled into two high pigtails, parted with a zigzag pattern. Her bangs are side-swept to the left, the layers forming her face curled inward, and the layers behind curled outwards. Two shorter shoulder-length locks of hair in the front of her ears left loose. She wears a black poke pie hat, embezzled with a wooden talisman, adorned with a red plum possum branch in the broom, along with an indigo tassel tied in the looped knot. Hu Tao wears a traditional red shirt with a mandarin collar, a black coat with a darker collar and sleeves cuffs, and black shorts with gold accents. Her pyro vision is embedded at the back of her coat, along with long rectangular cocktails and golden brooches attached underneath her coat's collar and wrist. She wears a part of a mid-calf length white socks and also has red stripes with a plum blossom wrapped around the cuffs, along with a low-heeled black dress shoes. Her fingernails are painted black and she wears multiple rings. Her left hand rings are on the index finger in the middle, and on her right has the middle index and the thumb. She wears a loose red bracelet on her right hand, though her long sleeves usually hide it. Her outfit, called the Plum Blossom Bouquet, is described to be the daily work clothes of the Genshin funeral parlor's director. At first glance, Hu Tao appears to be a quirky and cheerful girl. She enjoys pranking people, and despite sitting around and doing nothing, as she wishes to live her life to the fullest, Her eccentric and off-the-wall personality often leaves people with a negative impression of her, especially Chi-Chi, who stares that she has a punchable face and should be stored in a fridge. In context, Xiao enjoys her sense of humor, finding it intriguing but interesting. On the other hand, when handling funerals and the last rites, she becomes more solemn and consistently reminds her employees to never defect from the customer's request. Due to the importance and traditions of the parlor's duties, she expresses a dislike towards people treating her or her employees with suspicion whenever they go to work at night. Despite her negative impressions, Hu Tao is knowledgeable about the Adepti and Li Wei's past. She also suspects that Zhang Lin is an Adeptus based on his demeanor. However, she usually keeps this a secret from those who are unaware for their own safety. Hu Tao accepts death as a natural part of life and tells others to enjoy their short lives. However, she is particularly eccentric about this, in trying to bring as much death as possible for the sake of the parlor's success. She also loathes those who are trying to prolong their natural lifespan, such as Beizu. She also appears to show a lack of interest in her prior vision. Secret Spear of Rain Shin is Hu Tao's normal attack. The normal attack can perform up to 6 constructed spear strikes, while the charge attack consumes a certain amount of stamina to lunge forward, dealing damage to opponents along the way. And the plummeting attack plunges from mid-air to strike the ground below, damaging opponents along the path, and dealing AoE damage upon impact. Guide to the Afterlife is Hu Tao's elemental skill. Only an unwavering flame can cleanse the impurities of this world. Hu Tao consumes a set portion of her HP to knock the surrounding enemies step back and enter the Paramina Papilio state. With the Paramina Papilio state, it increases Hu Tao's ATK based on her match XP. At the time of entering this state, the attack bonus gained to the attack couldn't exceed from 100%. And Hu Tao's base attack and converts attack damage to pyro damage, which couldn't be overwritten by any other elemental infusion. Charge attacks applied the Blood Blossom. Effect to the enemy's hit increase Hu Tao's resistance to interruption. The Blood Blossom, with the enemy's effect by Blood Blossom, will take damage of pyro for about 4 seconds. The damage is concerned by the elemental skill damage. Each enemy can be affected by only one Blood Blossom effect at a time, and the distribution may only be referred to by Hu Tao herself. Primera Palo ends when the distribution is over or Hu Tao left the battlefield or has fallen. Spirit Soother is Hu Tao's elemental burst. It commands a blazing spirit to attack, dealing pyro damage in a large AoE. Upon striking the enemy, regardless at the percentage of Hu Tao's max HP, this effect can be triggered up to 5 times based on the number of enemies hit. If Hu Tao's HP is below and equal of 50% when the enemy is hit, both the damage and HP resurrection are increased. Flutterby is Hu Tao's first extension passive skill. When the Paramina Papilio state activated by Guide to the Afterlife ends, all allies in the party, excluding Hu Tao herself, will have their quit rate increased by 12% for 8 seconds. Sanguine Rouge is Hu Tao's fourth Ascension passive skill. When Hu Tao's HP is equal or to the less than 50%, her power damage bonus is increased by 33%. And More the Merrier is Hu Tao's Unity passive skill. When Hu Tao cooks a dish perfectly, she has an 80% chance to receive an additional suspicious dish of the same type. The 77th director of the Wanshan Funeral Parlor, a young lady managing the parlor's operation despite her position, she's an admirable person who puts on no airs. Her antics are as plainful as the sand of yellow grain shell. She never chases to shook people with her countless bizarre ideas. Hu Tao may seem like a all play and no work, spending every free moment or leisure and being wisely considered a laissez-faire business owner. It is only during funeral ceremonies when she personally leads her undertakers through lamp-like alleys that shows her dignified and solemn side. Funeral ceremonies allowed mortals to leave their world with dignity. In Li Wei's Wanshan Funeral Parlor is said to be painting the last strokes on the scrolls of people's lives in the most respectful way. Traditional funerals include multiple steps such as holding an wake, burial, putting up a memorial plaque, all of which are subject to strict rules. Regardless of their social standing and level of wealth, all who depart deserve a ceremony that would be due to their honor. This is the Wanshan Funeral Parlor's client service philosophy. One would think that such a reputable organization outright led only by an individual of the utmost learning and strategy. Yet the heavy maintain of the 77th director has fallen on the shoulders of a young lady like Hu Tao. She has got quite a reputation in Li Wei. Whenever someone mentions Hu Tao, their neighbors find it extremely hard to navigate the conversation. Although she is widely praised for her wit and shrewdness in aesthetic notions, and not as welcomed, as she often lets her imagination run wild. As a 3-year-old, she would read through volumes of classic texts while doing handstands. At 6, she would cut classes and fall asleep in coffins. Why does that make me think of someone else? When she was 8, she started living in the parlor and learning the etiquette of funeral ceremonies. One would never use the word measure to describe her behavior. During her teen years, Hu Tao has tasked with conducting a funeral ceremony for the first time. The parlor's undertakers and consultants were anticipating her debut with her stomachs in knots, as if they were suspended over the peaks of Julian Karst. Fortunately, Hu Tao treats the parlor's operations with the utmost importance and is always looking to grow her business. At the Wanshan Funeral Parlor, the living give us more to see the dead on their way. We have a responsibility to both parties, so we gotta make sure both sides are happy. When it comes to the parlor's rules, Hu Tao knows them all at the back of her hand. Each day, when the parlor closes its doors, Hu Tao invites consultants from different walks of life to pass their teachings on to the undertakers. The funeral tradition is like science. It couldn't be performed based on impressions and personal habits. Of all the lecturers, Zhang Li is the most revered one. As such, his lessons have proven to be most effective in cultivating the confidence of Wanshan's funeral parlor's undertakers. Despite often being teased by Hu Tao due to his old-fashioned style, he is also the person who she treats the most. Apart from that, Hu Tao always interacts with undertakers to respect their clients' wishes and not insist on any particular form of funeral. Some clients want nothing more than a peaceful ceremony. some opt for a more lively style of event. There are also weather clients who would request a funeral arrangement of the most pompous kind. The services we provide have to be tailor-made according to the client's needs. Ever since Hu Tao took over, the parlor's operations have been solid and relatable, and ceremonies conducted so tactfully that quite a few suspicious people in Liyue have changed their attitudes towards funerals. Even so, Hu Tao still has the tendency to wander off, disappearing as soon as her undertakers are busy listening to lectures. The hobbies and interests of this young director are just as eccentric as her personality, and yet it is difficult to say with certainty if those activities are a purely licensee nature. Hu Tao's shadow can be seen in the moonlight docks of the highest and most prestigious viewpoints in the mountains when she's likely to take in the scenery and shape her thoughts into beautiful poetry. She loves to roam freely at night, looking for inspiration when it strikes her. No matter where she is, she couldn't help but compose a poem on the spot. If they are particularly lucky, the traveling merchants taking replies around the Wagwan Stone Forest can spot a mysterious girl keeping herself amused in solitude. Hu Tao can play a 4-player card game accompanied by no one for hours on end. That said, the joys of engaging in such activities remain a mystery to all but Hu Tao herself. The Misery Silver Affairs is guarded by 2 lifelike stone lions, a symbol of power and authority. However, Hu Tao, who happened to be passing by the ministry building one day, saw them in a different light. At first, she examined the lions with a thoughtful look, but soon enough, her penetrative face gave way to the wide smile as she slapped them on the forepaws. For a moment on, Hu Tao often visited and petted the stone statues. Not only would she talk to them, but also give them pet names. Whiskers for the one on the left and Mittens for the one on the right. On occasion, she would even bring a bucket of water and a big brush to bathe them. Even more moved, so cheerful and delighted that one might think they were her actual pets. As it happened, another feline, a living and breathing calico cat, could be found enjoying the local delicacies in front of Shinrei kiosks not too far from the ministry building. One day, some city folk came to play with the restaurant's favorite, providing an interesting follow for Hu Tao's particularities. Met that the befuddled glazes of the bystanders Hu Tao shown the unwavering confidence. Sure, your kitty's cute, but the same can be said about my whiskers and mittens. Their fur might be harder, but they are still as fluffy. Any animal that brings people joy may become a pet, and when it comes to majestic looks, your long fur ball simply can't measure up to my lions. Shuffle to say that the expectation was met when an even greater connection from the outlookers. Yet the group of people shocked the most and most often of Hu Tao's antics were the mystery guards. Soft footprints could often be heard in the front of the building at around midnight. Initially, the guards suspected that it had been a thief preparing to rob officials. To their unsucceeding surprise, it would turn out just to be a young lady playing with the stone lines. The guards were faced with even the bigger condemnation when once everyone had reluctantly got used to her presence, Hu Tao discounted her visits. That meant the responsibility for cleaning the statues fell on the guards' shoulders once again. Subsequently, they decided to keep guard by the lions for many days and coordinate that Hu Tao's return. Once they finally had the opportunity to ask her why she would not visit anymore, they received the most absurd of answers. Whisker and Mittens are adults now and can take care of themselves. Excuse me, I am running late for my heart-to-heart with a statue of the Seven regarding the meanings of life. Not long after her initial meeting with the little zombie, Hu Tao decided that, as her self-proclaimed true friend, she would grant Chi-Chi eternal peace. Hu Tao would go on to kidnap Chi-Chi several times following much deliberation in every instance, including calculating the most auspicious time for the ceremony, eliminating to following the standard procedure of cremation. After which she would place Chi-Chi in a tomb on the outskirts of the city. In fact, she would have succeeded already if not for Benzu's timely interruptions. Each time the Babu Pharmacy's owner managed to catch up to them, Hu Tao had already had Chi-Chi packed in a bag, with only her head sticking out. Starting utter confusion as Hu Tao was vigorously drugging a hole in it for the pipe. Afterwards, Hu Tao sent Chi-Chi an apology letter in which she expected deep regret that she had not been able to lay Chi-Chi to rest for fast enough. In Hu Tao's eyes, Chi-Chi passed away a long time ago, but has been trapped in the world and couldn't free herself from her eternal suffering. Baizu, for his part, had grown ever more relentless in the pursuit of eternal life after meeting Chi-Chi. This act of defiance against the cycle of life and death was unsuccessful to Hu Tao. She wanted to bury Chi-Chi not only out of the consideration for her friend, but also to restore the natural order. But Chi-Chi could not be disagreed more, as she was afraid of death and disliked Hu Tao for her attempts. Because the struggle between Hu Tao and her had been going on for so long, Chi-Chi has experienced a breakthrough. She has started to remember places where she might hide to avoid being captured by Hu Tao. Perhaps it's due to those despite survival efforts that Hu Tao dedicated to do something unusual and dig deeper into Chi-Chi's past. The story of her accident and the mystery of the Adepti, the series of coincidences filled Hu Tao's heart with hesitation. Since Chi-Chi willed to live so strong, she would still not be forced to move on. Given the circumstances, she could only be treated as the rare expectation that eludes natural laws. Ever since, Hu Tao's attributes towards Chi-Chi has changed drastically, to the point that she would plummet her. Unfortunately, the damage has been done, and Hu Tao has become Chi-Chi's bugbear. The little zombie may need several years more to let go of her grievances. Hu Tao is not, in fact, best known for her role as director, but for her other great accomplishments, the creation of poetry. She dubs herself the Vineyard of the darkest alleys. Her free verse flows forth unaimed from her mouth whenever she has the free time to be out in the streets. The Headlight Tune is Hu Tao's most famous work, well loved not only by the people of the harbor, but even so on the lips of children as far as Chengsheng village as well. Hobbyists and critics alike were greatly surprised by the simple but profounded originality of the hill flag and its creation, and went to the Warren bookhouse in the Doves to search for the works of the greatest poet. Unfortunately, Hu Tao's anthologies, named Fiddlesticks and Of the Common Lives, respectively, have yet to be published. Zhang Chu, even in mice in the books, also wanted to meet this strange person, and so close as ambitious dates to visit, bringing a gift with him. The two hit it off immediately, and they exchanged pointers and impromptu poetry at the Wanshin's main hall. And when faced with the poetry of Sheng Tru's traditional artistic bent, Hu Tao could always return in kind with some strange and mellifluous verse. And there are meanings in chaos. Indeed, a rhythm too bizarre that anyone could precise, and it was catchy too. Thus did she beat the old master with untrained fists, leading Shang-Chi to at a loss of words. At least the poetic spear ended abruptly, and they have been friends ever since, reading and composing poetry with one another when they have the time to meet. Over time, Shan Yun, too, would be pulled into the service of Emperor, their laughter filling the streets. The poems born from these sessions of the recorded by the bystanders. If you ever should hear a pair of matched verses on the strict of other playful, you most likely have to hear one created by the joyfully by Hu Tao in Shangqin. This hat is somewhat on the hard side, and an insignia of the Wanshin funeral parlors adorns in front. It is said this hat is passed down from the 75th director to Hu Tao. However, the director was large, muscle-bound, and had a heat at least 2 sizes larger than hers. Ultimately, Hu Tao had to spend an entire day and night modifying the hat, with her own hands such that its dimensions would fit hers. When she meets the others, she tells them the hat is magical, upholding good and repelling evil, and it's a brighter of peace. The Undertakers laugh and leave it as that, but the 77th director clearly does treasure the hat. Not matter the rainstorm or if Hu Tao returns late covered in muck, that the hat will still remain spotless and clean. The palm blossom that adorns its side of the hat is plucked from the plum tree that Hu Tao planted and grew herself. Its creation progress is as the following: plucked in the air, then paint, lustre and outlines carefully before the sun dying for 3 days in the vine. A beautiful accessory, soft to the touch and bearing the delicate fragrance. The tale should begin with the funeral of Hu Tao's grandfather. 10 days before the funeral itself, Hu had passed away following a bout of illness. For his 75th director, Wan Shao Parlor had led a grand funeral in accordance with the last wishes of the old man himself, to be conducted by Hu Tao. Only 13 at the time, Hu Tao would later go on to become the director in turn, made all the arrangements herself to the highest standard, greatly impressing the undertakers. After the funeral, the 13th-old Hu Tao grabbed her traveling bag and crept out alone in the dead of night. In her bag were only a few rations, some water, and the means to create some light. She had headed to the mysterious and seldom seen frontier. Heading straight from Wuwan Hill, and one may arrive at the border. It is the line that separates life and death, the secrets of which have been managed by Wanshin Funeral Parlor for generations. According to the legend, it is the place where the souls of the past relatives and the spirits of those with unfulfilled aspirations linger. For Hu Tao, this journey was a chance to see her grandfather once more before he departed forever. For 2 days, she journeyed uncertainly before finally arriving at her destination, yet was unable to locate her grandfather upon arrival. Between the immensible spirits she walked, but not one of them resembled the old man. She stayed there the whole day before falling asleep in exhaustion, awaking to a night sky and heavy dew around her granted a few lone spirits, clapping and laughing. Silly girl, why would old Hu Tao be here of all places? What were you thinking, looking for your relatives here? Not one of them were swayed so easily. Hu Tao continued to wait. Day after day, her rations gradually disappeared, and her water supply drained away. But her grandfather did not appear. In the end, it was a little old woman who came to her. She laid eyes on the exhausted Hu Tao and smiled as she spoke. Look at your stubbornness. You're exactly like old Hu Tao. It's a shame, but none of the Wanshan funeral parlor directors will ever linger here. You come from a family of plain seekers, so let me return the favor. Go back. Go back to where you came from. The old woman bid farewell to Hu Tao before passing over the border and into the distance. Hu Tao watched it as the figure of a mysterious woman grew smaller and disappeared, as a sense of doubt, triggered with relief, and manifested itself. At last, she came to the conclusion her grandfather's absence was due to him having passed over to the border as soon as she arrived. To the place where he was bound, he had been open and honest in life, leaving upon no regrets, so was it right for his departure to be framed in the rightful terms. With a smile, she set forth on the return journey. The farewell moon had been casting on the thin air light on the way over but had not been replaced by the bright light of dawn. As she walked it, Hu Tao thought of a saying that her grandfather had often quoted. The life to in death, die in death. No way, it goes like this. Live in life, died in death. Follow your heart. Do what you can. It was noon when Hu Tao arrived home. She claimed that over the wall into the Weir courtyard and straight to her room and unpacked it for a travel bag. With her food and water long gone and the rest of her belongings unpacked, the bag she had taken for emptied instead contracted a colorful vision just when it had been arrived. As one of the few living that had drained a visit with the border, perhaps Hu Tao's actions had moved some unknown god. Perhaps then this contributed a heavenly gift, the ultimate resurrection of her strength. While the characters in Hu Tao's name put together mean walnut, they are written as two separate words. Her surname, Hu, and her first name, Tao, is peach. The English version reflects this by spreading the two characters with a space, unlike most other language characters, whose names are written as one word. The Chinese official media, which writes the characters' names in both Chinese and English alphabets, spells her name as Hu Tao, without space seen in the official English equivalent. Her constellation, Batilio Contractus, is Latin for the butterfly of Charon. Her name, Hu Tao, sounds similar to the words of butterfly in Chinese. Hudie in Chinese and Korean characters teasers, Hu Tao jokingly refers to her and the butterflies as having the same surname. Fact 1. Zhang Lin first mentions her during the Odd Conquest, Salty Fragrance, in hopes that she has been able to keep the authorities at bay after the Qixing turned their suspicions on the Fatui, which the Wanshan funeral parlor is associated with. She is also mentioned in an anonymous message left at the Wanshun in bulletin board, which is likely Zhang Li's. Fact 2. Hu Tao writes a response to Beizu's message on the Free Young Slope bulletin board, in which she says he should hand over Chi-Chi over to her to be buried at the Wanshan funeral parlor. Fact number 3. Hu Tao's Chinese voice actor is the same voice actor for Kiana Castellana, the main character of the other MiHoYo game's previous games, Honkai Impact 3rd. Fact number 4. Hu Tao is associated with butterflies because Chinese traditions implies associated with them life and death. And the dead, she wears plum blossoms at the hat, which are associated with late winter. This fits her title, Fragrance in Law, which also refers to winter transporting into spring. And fact 5, Hu Tao is the first and only Event 5-star character to be revealed during the Virgin trailer, most likely due to her relations with death, which was taboo during Lunar New Year, the time before her release. And that is Hu Tao's information. Next time I will go over Zhao. So see you next time.